Okay, so picture this. You're just scrolling through social media, right? And then you see this video. It's grainy, shaky, a bunch of protesters, Palestinian flags waving, angry chanting outside this old, kind of crumbling white building. You can even see them burning flags, maybe some effigies. And the caption? It just screams, "Islamic extremists destroy Indonesia's last synagogue." Man, your stomach just drops. You feel that surge of outrage, that instant need to share. So you click it. Boom. Thousands do the same. Within hours, it's absolutely everywhere. But what if that caption? What if it got everything wrong? What if that building wasn't even under attack? What if it wasn't even torn down during that protest? This is the real story of what happened to Indonesia's last known synagogue. And trust me, it's a wild ride. It's about how a simple viral post twisted grief, a little bit of greed, and a truly forgotten community into total outrage clickbait. So, first things first. Yes, the synagogue was absolutely real. It was called Beith Shalom, which means House of Peace, and it was in Surabaya, over on East Java. But here's where the viral myths start to fall apart. This wasn't some ancient centuries-old structure. It was actually a regular mid-20th century house, built by a guy named Joseph Ezra Isaac Nassim. It only got converted into a synagogue sometime around 1939 or 1948. So, old, but not ancient. By the 2000s, this place was pretty much locked up and unused. It was a stark reminder of a Jewish community that once thrived in Indonesia, but had, sadly, mostly dwindled away. The synagogue wasn't bustling anymore, but its very existence was still profoundly significant, both architecturally and spiritually. Then in January 2013, it was gone. No protests, no angry mobs, just bulldozers. Now, the demolition itself, that whole process actually kicked off with a court case, and it was filed by Joseph Sayers. He was a Jewish man based in Surabaya, and he'd been the synagogue's longtime caretaker. You know, what Jewish tradition calls a shamash. So, in 2011, Joseph goes to court. His argument was that he was the only surviving member of the synagogue's congregation. And get this, he actually named 3 other people in the lawsuit as defendants. Their names were Jacob Saul, Yosua Ezra, and Salomo Sayers. But here's the mind-blowing twist. All 3 of those people were already dead, like for years. So naturally, nobody showed up to contest the case. And the court? It ruled in Joseph's favor by default. Armed with that seemingly ironclad ruling, he then turned right around and transferred the synagogue's ownership to a private developer, a company called PT Sipta Karya Bersama. Pretty clever, right? I mean, technically, it was legal, given that the court's ruling went completely unchallenged. But ethically, oh man, that's where things get super murky. When the building finally came down, other folks in the Jewish diaspora started to notice, and they were not happy. One of them was Michael Salam, who was actually a relative of one of those deceased defendants Joseph had sued. He immediately filed a police report accusing Joseph Sayers of fraud and, basically, property theft. Michael even brought in Ari Giuliano Gema, a lawyer who's pretty well known for cultural preservation cases. Ari argued that the synagogue should have been treated as a cultural heritage site, not just some private property you could sell off. And here's the kicker. Back in 2009, the Surabaya city government had actually proposed it for heritage status, but they never got around to finalizing that designation under Indonesia's cultural heritage law. That's UU number 11 Tahun 2010, if you're curious. So, while Joseph's legal loophole totally worked for him, the wholesale and demolition kind of exploited this huge bureaucratic gray area. City officials never stepped in. The police just shrugged and said it was a civil matter. And just like that, poof, the synagogue vanished. Now remember how I said the demolition was quiet? No angry crowds, no riots. That's important, because this is where the misinformation really starts to creep in. What did happen, though, was that in 2008, 2009, and 2010, during those big flare-ups between Israel and Palestine, some anti-Israel protesters did gather outside the synagogue. They burned Israeli flags, they held up signs, and yeah, videos from those protests totally exist. They're absolutely real. But here's the crucial part. The actual demolition happened in 2013, a full 3 years after those protests. Someone online just took that old protest footage, those angry crowds, the flags burning. Then they repackaged it with photos of bulldozers tearing down the building. They slapped a sensational caption on it, making it look like it was all one big violent mob action. And then they blasted it all over social media. And people, they just believed it. The loss of Beith Shalom just hits so much harder when you realize the full, incredible story of Indonesia's Jewish community. Jews have actually lived in Indonesia for centuries, especially right there in Surabaya. They weren't just in their houses of worship. Their legacy and their presence were woven into the very fabric of the land. You can still see it today. If you go to Kembang Kuning Cemetery, there's a 2,000 square meter Jewish burial ground in Block G, tucked right beside the Christian section. You'll find graves there with these beautiful, classical European designs, pillars, and Hebrew inscriptions still perfectly clear. Even the old ritual bathing house, this small 4x3 meter building, is still standing. It even has a Star of David carved right above its doorway. Caretakers like Rianto, who've been watching over these grounds for years, can tell you about their unique burial rituals, like how the deceased would be wrapped in a shroud, just like in Muslim burials, but then the coffin would be flipped upside down over the body, and visitors still leave coins on the graves, weighted down with stones, whispering ritual prayers before they leave. It's this incredible blend of traditions, and Jewish influence wasn't just religious. It was deeply economic and cultural too. Take Charles Mussry, for instance. Born in 1919 to a Jewish Egyptian father and an Atsanese mother, he became a super wealthy car dealer. He owned this massive showroom near what's now Delta Plaza. And his grave? It still rests peacefully in Kembang Kuning today. As for the synagogue itself, it was a modest house, sure, but it was beautifully adapted for prayer and just bursting with symbolism. Big, beautiful wooden doors with those prominent stars of David. Inside, you'd find teak altars, rattan chairs, cool terrazzo tiles, and Hebrew inscriptions all over the walls. And its Dutch colonial architecture was perfectly adapted for the tropical climate, with high windows, thick eaves, and great cross ventilation. Architectural historian Freddie H. Istanto put it perfectly. He called it a witness of civilization. But now, like so much of Indonesia's truly pluralist past, it's just gone, overwritten. So no, let's be crystal clear. Islamic extremists didn't tear down that synagogue. What really happened? A guy filed a pretty clever court case. A judge ruled without knowing the full, complicated story. a developer bought the land, and a city simply failed to protect its own past. Then, someone online added fire and fury, a compelling, outrage-inducing narrative. And the world just chose to believe a better story than the truth. So, next time you see a post that instantly makes you feel outraged and totally righteous, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, what if the real story here is actually way messier and much, much more human? Because in this crazy world of viral noise, the single most powerful thing you can do is just hit pause and start asking better questions.